Welcome everybody, this is Tim Watrous, President of Digital Advisors.
And this is Kevin Gordon, President of Capital Advisors Group.
We'd like to welcome you to our K-12 Politics and Tech video series.
Our objective is to give you the absolute latest of what's going on in Sacramento that affects public school districts, obviously, and as well as all the technology stuff that's going on that's so vital to delivering for kids these days.
And remember, if you find these videos useful, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and share out over social media. You're our marketing team. We appreciate your support, and let's go ahead and get started.
Welcome everybody. Tim Watrous, President of Digital Advisors, back with another episode of K-12 Politics and Tech. As always, Kevin Gordon, President of Capital Advisors, co-host of the show, joining us. Kevin, glad you're here.
Good to see you, Tim.
Yeah, and special guest we've had on the show before, one of the partners at Capital Advisors, Barrett Snyder's joining us. Barrett, glad you're here this morning.
Hey, Tim. Hey, Kevin.
All right. Well, hey, let's get started here. We'll start with DC as usual. And Kevin, there's some momentum building for Biden's stimulus plan, the new stimulus that he's rolled out. Can you tell us a little bit about that, the latest news there?
Yep. So up till probably after midnight on the 10th, the House Education and Labor Committee marked up, which is part of the process, that they, as well as 11 other committees of Congress, will do on the president's $1.9 trillion package. The Ed and Labor Committee, led by Congressman Bobby Scott of Virginia, dealt with the part that's the $170 billion plus another $39 billion that's aimed at early education childcare, and passed that out, rejecting. It was a pretty partisan vote because the Republicans were not on board, and put up a number of amendments that would have tied this money to a requirement for reopening schools. The Democrats rejected all of those amendments and moved the whole package forward. But it does mean $130 billion for K-12 education. In that, there is a required set aside of up to 20% when you get it to try to mitigate learning loss, which dovetails perfectly with what Governor Newsom's doing here in California, and actually redoubles our argument that some of the money that the governor is spending on learning loss mitigation out of Prop 98 that could be used for either paying down deferrals or other kinds of things could be backfilled by some of this federal money when it comes. We're definitely going to be putting that effort forward when the May revision comes out. But anyways, good news on that moving forward. If this is one of 12 committees that's acted already on the markup and getting that package considered, and other committees are doing the same, then this thing has got some good momentum moving through the House. I don't think anybody doubts that the president will get his $1.9 trillion package. It's just an issue of how quickly will it come.
Well, we've seen Wall Street react this week as well. Many stocks are up because of the impending stimulus news. So the folks in Wall Street believe in it, and as you said, it seems imminent. It's just about timing. So we'll look forward to getting more updates on that as things progress. But thank you for the update.
You bet.
And more news from DC. Cardona is advancing through the Senate. Just tell us a little bit more about that and the process there.
Yeah, so that's the other thing that happens is the Senate, we call it the HELP Committee because it's Health, Education, and Labor and Pensions Committee, approving Secretary Designee Cardona, which means that goes now to the full U.S. Senate. That vote is expected maybe as early as next week. So we'll finally have an education secretary on board. And there's a lot of pending issues that people want the secretary to deal with. And in fact, we're waiting on some key issues as well. And I know, Barrett, you had some thoughts because, we talk a lot lately in the last few weeks. The focus has been on COVID testing. Well, we know that there's a lot of focus too on academic testing as well. Barrett,
the other testing that we're used to talking about. Yeah, I mean, the State Board of Education had a hearing scheduled for February 10th where they were going to debate and act on potentially seeking a waiver from the feds on federal and state testing requirements that we have to do. But because of the holdup on the Cardona approval in the U.S. Senate, they don't have much direction out of DC, so they don't really know what to do with an action by our state board. So having some clarity from DC on that sooner than later would be good. So we'll look for that. I'm hearing, Kevin, that basically folks in DC are saying there's not going to be votes on much of anything until they're done with the impeachment hearing. So, maybe next week. Seems to match up.
I think right. Yep.
All right. Well, I guess exciting news that, we're seeing some changes. I know a lot of folks are excited about the fact that former educator and is now going to be at the helm. So we'll see what sort of changes happen there. And thanks for the update, you too. One more thought on DC. About 30 Democratic congressmen sent a letter to the FCC asking them to help close the digital divide. And I'm not counting, but we're 11 months into this pandemic, and we haven't seen the FCC really step up and help in this regard yet. We are excited because Rosa Morsel has been appointed interim chair, and in that line of folks that need to be, approved by the Senate. We know that there's going to be another, FCC, perhaps a chairperson, but at least a commissioner that's going to be announced. And when that happens, we expect to see some movement finally in this regard. I just want to reiterate to everyone, we mentioned it, I believe, very briefly last week, that while E-rate is not supporting home access, E-rate does support access at your sites. We know that reopening's coming. There's a new E-rate window that opened very recently, and you may not have had, actually, let me just straighten one thing out. There's two versions of E-rate. E-rate category 1 is for your phone lines, and E-rate category 2 is for your Wi-Fi at your schools. Many school districts have never used E-rate category 2, and if you haven't, please take a look, because there's at least 50% of the cost of your Wi-Fi is going to be covered by category 2. Many of our clients had never accessed that, and several smaller districts had $200,000 to $400,000 to $800,000 in funding available for them. So even though E-rate, we get a little fired up on the show, or I do, about E-rate not supporting home access, it does support school access. The window just opened. You have an opportunity to take advantage of that, and please do. So with that, I'll just cut back over to you, Garrett, and just school reopening guidance. There's been a lot of talk and debate lately. I know you put a memo out to the Capital Advisors clients about this, but can you tell us the latest on school reopening as far as you see it?
Yeah, I mean, it is the issue that has sucked all the oxygen out of the room in Sacramento for the last, week to 2 weeks. So the governor had a proposal, in January to spend $2 billion and incentivize getting schools reopened. The politics of reopening schools have gotten really interesting, right? It's a hot button issue across the country. It's also a major element of this growing threat against the governor in terms of a recall effort. So I would say there's kind of a scramble would be a good word here in Sacramento to try and find a solution to this. But the politics are just really daunting. And so what we're picking up is that the legislature is working with the administration to try and rewrite that deal a little bit. Labor has weighed in, as we've all seen and talked about recently, I think, on these podcasts, with the proposal. And we're starting to hear rumors of what a deal might look like. And that was the impetus for the email that we sent out to all our clients with talking points, because some of the elements that we're hearing are not encouraging. And in fact, it's almost as if some of us said, like they're not hearing us, or maybe they didn't read our letter, kind of a thing. But we've been meeting with folks from the legislature and the administration, and just kind of what are those issues? What do they boil down to right now? We expect a deal maybe by the end of the week, and what we think are out there are issues around vaccines, testing cadence, those kinds of things. One, we're reiterating to the legislature and to the administration that none of this stuff should probably be contingent upon vaccines being all of your staff being vaccinated. That's just going to be a deal breaker if you want to get schools reopened this academic year. We're hearing there's not much movement at all on the testing cadence in the debate amongst the legislators. And I would say if there's one thing that legislators really need to understand is why the testing cadences we've seen are just in many places logistically not possible to achieve. We've heard from a lot of clients around just how cumbersome that process is, getting tests, and then particularly with students, if you're going to throw students into the mix and you're doing all your staff and your students. So testing cadence is a big one. Physical distancing, that language is funky. Before it said 4 to 6 feet is practicable. down now we're hearing language. It's sort of a hard and fast. And when you get, especially when you got young kids that are, they don't fit into little bubbles all the time. So the physical distancing. Another one, two big ones that we think are really crucial. Liability, obviously, which we're not sure is getting much play, but then explicitly grandfathering in districts that are already open or have plans and locally bargained agreements that would allow them to phase in already, that they've come to some understanding with their local labor partners. If nothing else, for the politics of this, I mean, the governor needs to get schools open to get the monkey off his back in terms of this debate. If whatever they do causes schools that are open to close, it will backfire on him in a way, and particularly where we know those schools are. These are not places of the state that he needs to have that be playing out for him, just from a political perspective, right? So really hammering on, it needs to be explicit, because what we're hearing a lot of on this is that, well, we're not requiring you to anywhere to go back to the table. No, but if depending on what you put in there, labor can send a demand to bargain letter and really sort of muck it up. And so what we need is them to be very explicit that if you're operating, you're open, and you have a safety plan, and you've got a bargaining agreement or MOU that allows you to do that, you just keep going. You don't need to change anything, just keep moving. So I think those are the big elements. I don't know, Kevin, if you had others that you thought we missed on this or want to chime in.
You hit, pardon me, you hit every key issue. The overarching theme of the input that's been put out there by our clients, as well as our partners in the major statewide associations, has been to say, if you're talking about a strategy to reopen, whatever you do, don't come up with a strategy that ends up actually inhibiting reopening and or actually closing people that managed to get open. And that's what we definitely wanted to underscore. And that message, I think, was heard a series of meetings that I know Barrett and I were both a part of yesterday. I think we're going to end up getting a little bit better result than we were expecting.
And it sounds like there's a lot of discussion to merge the two pots of money that the governor proposed, just to sort of talk about the funding pieces of it, where that was the $2 billion for reopening and then the 4.6 for expanded learning. There's talk about, mushing these two things together a little bit. Unclear if it's the 2 billion stays for only reopening stuff, or they're gonna allow some crossover, but we're also hearing that. So we expect something by the end of the week.
Well, thanks for the update there, Barrett. And yeah, I mean, we've heard about reopening since everyone had to leave initially, but it feels like we're getting close. So thank you for the update, and we'll keep everybody posted on this show. Speaking of reopening, everyone's spending a lot on technology. There's the new stimulus dollars that probably hit the bank accounts, and again, thinking about technology that's going to allow us to stay connected to students even when we reopen, have them back on campus. We still want to stay connected with them, staff and students, when they're at home. So article in EdSurge this week about EdTech spending doubling in the next 2 years. So even though it's had a tremendous increase, it's about to double again. And there's just a couple quick thoughts that come to mind when I hear those numbers. One is, as you increase your spending on technology, are you considering professional development? Because you're putting more devices, more applications, everyone's spending more time with technology. The old days of, 2 professional development days a year are not working in this new environment. And I would say it's time to invest heavily in time and in professional development resources in wonderful organizations like CUE, for example, who are right in this EdTech sweet spot. You want to really think about some of those offerings that they have for your teachers and your staff, so that everyone can really adapt to this new world. And there's even a lot of PD offerings out there for students, things like Common Sense Media, teaching students how to be better digital citizens and so on. So really double down. You're going to double down on your technology investments, hardware and software. Make sure you're equally ramping up your spending on professional development so that you can have great connectivity and wonderful use of those resources that you're investing in. The second piece is make sure you're investing in robust devices. A lot of times people are like, oh, I just need the cheapest Chromebook. And while that will allow you to get on the internet, there are applications like Zoom and like Google Meet that actually make low power, or let's say less capable Chromebooks struggle. Both of those platforms are working on this challenge and problem, but you need to be thinking about 3 years down the road as these things get more advanced and you're launching more advanced applications on these Chromebooks. Do you have room to grow? So you kind of want to really think about over speccing your Chromebooks to give you that ability to grow into over that 3-year lifespan, and in some cases more, so that you can run all the applications you want over time. So don't go to that lowest common denominator. Make sure you invest a little bit of time. And as we've mentioned many times on this show before, looking for Chromebooks that have the LTE hotspot built in will save you a lot of time and dollars if you're investing in hotspots. So just wanted to make sure we threw out that information. Barrett, I want to go back to you and talk about new, I guess, CDPH guidance and FAQs that are out. Can you talk to us a little bit about, actually, this one's going to Kevin. Sorry, Barrett. Kevin, can you talk a little bit about that CDPH FAQ, please?
Right. So this week, that was one of the other announcements that was made, was this new Safe Schools for All hub that's now operational. So what they've done is CDPH has looked at a lot of the different questions and issues that have been raised by school officials, trying to tackle those and do it in a way that everybody has access to all the different questions and the answers that they're getting. I'm sure they're being inundated by questions by LEAs constantly. And instead of constantly trying to field all of those with return phone calls, that this FAQ is probably going to help. So that's going to be out there. I know the state's going to be putting something out. We are probably going to end up sending something out to our own clients so that they'll be able to just hyperlink, click on it, and see what's going on with regard to that FAQ. But the other thing that we've been waiting for is that the governor had said last week, he used the term adjudication, saying that the CDPH guidance that some LEAs were finding to be very rigid and not really incorporating the unique circumstances that they had, really almost cutting off their ability to reopen when they were set to reopen. There was this conversation the governor said about that we need to be flexible and we need to create an adjudication process for local districts that were really near to reopening to figure out if we can get them open. And we waited for that. We hadn't seen it for a while, but finally that, again, this week has been one of the issues that they've finally released. And they did it in what's called a safety review process, this safety review check that an LEA can request of the state to see if its circumstances now might actually enable it to get around what were considered to be pretty rigid guidelines that prevented them from reopening. We do know that there are some circumstances where LEAs have been all set to reopen, but if they didn't quite get any kind of level of reopening by January 14th, that this process probably won't help them either, which is really unfortunate, because we do know that there are school districts that are in the queue, ready to go, ready to open. If the administration's really serious about getting schools reopen, then they really need to try to broaden, in fact, I think, their opening for LEAs that have done all the right things. They've got community buy-in, they've worked with their labor partners, and now it's just an issue of ensuring that they've got mitigation measures and those things in place to open safely. And they should be able to use this process. And right now they're kind of drawing the line at some of our districts not being able to use this process, but it's out there. I think, we're going to keep pushing for a broadening of the ability to use some of these tools to get open as this struggle continues.
All right. And Barry, did you have anything you wanted to add to that? I just didn't want to.
Nope. No, thank you.
To the next topic. No problem. No problem.
Talk about it.
Something else I did want to mention, Tim, that it related to your comment about the technology dollars being available forthcoming and, when those dollars hit your bank account. News that is important for you all to know is that we're expecting probably within the next week, and hopefully it's next week, but it could actually dribble over into the following week. We're expecting the California Department of Education to actually post the estimates of what they think local school districts are actually going to get from that last round of stimulus that was passed in December. So although we've got Biden money on the way in the future, there is that $6.7 billion of the new package that includes what you're talking about with regard to opportunities for investments in technology and everything regarding mitigation. And these rules are really broad in terms of what you can spend the money on. So we may be refreshing your memory once we get those dollar figures out on the street about the things that you can appropriately use it for. We talked about it a lot. We did a special broadcast, Tim and I did, on the 5th of January that outlined this, but it may be needed a little bit of a reminder again in the future, but we'll be back with more information on that.
Thanks, Kevin. And yeah, just to remind everybody, those YouTube broadcasts these are obviously on our YouTube channel. You can simply scroll back in the timeline and find that January 5th episode where we break down all aspects of the stimulus, including the timeframes to spend. But that's great news that those dollars are arriving. And thanks for the update, Kevin. Obviously, we'll keep everyone posted on the show there. Yeah, final thought here for the day is a news story out this week. We talked about the FCC awarding some dollars to SpaceX to beam satellite internet from space. SpaceX actually started taking pre-orders this week. And if you're a rural district and you're struggling, we've talked to several, and we've been helping a lot of school districts in this capacity to try to figure out the best way to get some level of internet to their most remote students and staff. I don't see the harm in signing up for this as a pre-order if you have no real other options to get robust internet out to people. So, just take an eye, at least investigate it. But, it's a limited amount of pre-orders they're going to take. So, and it's going to be based on geography. So jump on, take a look. If you have questions, of course, we can help. And we want to say thanks, everybody, for tuning in. So Kevin, Barrett, any final thoughts before we wrap up today?
I think you got it covered.
Yeah. Thanks, Tim.
Okay. All right, everybody, please share us out on social media. Thank you so much for being here, and we look forward to catching up with you next week.
So thanks again for joining us for another week of this broadcast.
And I just want to take a moment to remind you, if you haven't already, please subscribe to our channel and share this out over social media. Again, you're our marketing team. I'll also finish by saying, if you have some questions, please send them our way. We'd be happy to address them on a future broadcast. So with that, thanks everybody, and we'll talk soon.